a man's nether region suddenly burst into flames, sending him into a panic, and he quickly called out to his brother for help. To protect his sibling, the brother lifted his size 45 boots and kicked mightily towards the fiery emergency below. When standard attacks proved ineffective, the older brother executed his secret technique. The crow takes flight. After a flurry of actions, the blaze was successfully extinguished, but regrettably, a certain part of the younger brother was rendered non-functional. The young man, named Bayan Gangso, was already considered the least capable man in the village. With this calamity, he found himself even less able, now unable to even match the urinary prowess of a septuagenarian. Yet, what would drive him to further despair lay just ahead. On that day, when he went out to sell rice cakes, his virginity was astonishingly taken by an old woman, but the old woman not only refused to give him a red envelope as a gift but also mocked him for being as small as a mosquito. She even exposed to all the village women that he was a quick shooter and had earned the nickname Eunuch Bayan Gangso. From then on, Bayan Gangso became the laughingstock of the village, unable to hold his head high wherever he went. Distraught, he spent his days drowning his sorrows in alcohol. One day, his brother was carrying the drunken Bayan Gangso home when a beautiful woman blocked their path. She stood on a bridge, dancing gracefully. Under the moonlight, she looked like a night sprite, stunningly beautiful. The brothers were so mesmerized that they accidentally fell into the water. Feeling guilty towards Bayan Gangso, the brother gathered medicinal herbs from the mountain and brewed a tonic for him, hoping it would have an effect. The next day, as the men were bathing in the river, a pair of beautiful legs appeared from the distance, dancing with abandon among the crowd. Bayan Gangso looked closely and saw it was the goddess Dalgang. Her shoe had floated to the middle of the river. The men began to outdo each other in performances to impress her, but in the end, Dalgang emerged victorious. Watching Dalgang under the moonlight, Bayan Gangso felt like he had fallen in love. He prepared a gift meticulously, planning to pursue her. But that very evening, his brother brought Dalgang home and told Bayan Gangso that she was the sister-in-law he had found for him. What the hell? The woman he loved was his sister-in-law? Bayan Gangso's mentality collapsed on the spot, and unable to accept this, he chose to leave home. It was then that he encountered an old man and a young boy who were trapped. It was from this moment that his fate began to change. The old man, to repay Bayan Gangso for saving his life, told him about a jar of miraculous wine hidden under the city god temple. If he drank it, he would rejuvenate his vitality. However, he must abstain from female company for 15 days after drinking, or all would be in vain. The old man cautioned him repeatedly that the wine was potent and he should only take a small sip. If he were to drink excessively, it would bring disaster to the village. Remembering the village women's scorn and ridicule, Bayan Gangso, in a moment of frustration and defiance, drank the entire jar of miraculous wine in one gulp. Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder roared, and a bad premonition rose in the old man's heart. After drinking the wine, Bayan Gangso fell into a coma, convulsing on the ground, and miraculously, mushrooms began to grow around him. During his unconscious state, a terrible event unfolded. Their country went to war, and all the able men from the village were conscripted into military service. Bayan Gangso, in his comatose state, narrowly escaped this fate. When he awoke, Bayan Gangso felt an overwhelming surge of energy. He felt unstoppable, as if he could drink an entire river in one breath, which filled him with confidence. He actively sought out the old man, eager to have another urination contest with him. The old man was initially dismissive, but when Bayan Gangso began to urinate, his jaw dropped in astonishment. The stream was so powerful it was like a cascade from the heavens, not only extinguishing a forest fire but also causing a landslide. The phenomenon sparked a verse in the old man's heart. We pee together, you make a line, I form a pit. The towering spout of water eclipsed the sun's brilliance, leaving the onlookers at the foot of the mountain utterly astonished. Oh my God, did he install an engine? They collectively exclaimed. After the battle, Bayan Gangso became famous in a single stroke. All the women in the village looked at him with new respect. Even at night, they'd sneak past walls for a peek at Bayan Gangso's angry bird's feet.
저게 어떻게 됐어? 발로 이렇게 차는 게 아니라면.
Now, in the village, Bayan Gangso was the only man to meet. The women who witnessed this craved a piece of the action. Consequently, the following day, the unattached women of the village began their overt seduction, signaling and creating scenes filled with tempting allure. But Bayan Gangso had to resist. The timing wasn't right for such a relation. Disappointed and lonely, the women were left in yearning. To win Bayan Gangso over, they sent their seductress, the innkeeper. So alluring, the innkeeper pulled out all the stops, but Bayan Gangso remained unmoved. Just as she was about to make her move, an unexpected turn of events took place. Bayan Gangso, down on the ground, saw the moon and felt a fiery surge. Long-suppressed desires within him began to emerge. He firmly grasped the innkeeper, and a night of sweetness began. The rousing music woke all the village women, drawing them to where they sped. Bored and listless, they set aside their tasks and lined up at Bayan Gangso's doorstep, each eagerly awaiting their turn for a moment of joy. By working through the night, he touched every woman's heart. They each invited Bayan Gangso over, not wanting to be apart. Bayan Gangso's brave deeds also reached the general's ears. He summoned Bayan Gangso, as there was a task he needed him to undertake. The general spoke of Westerners who, under the guise of trade, oppressed their people. To put an end to this, they staked everything on a grand duel, a challenge of epic proportions. If Bayan Gangso could triumph, his brother from the front would be sent home. On the dueling ground, the robust youth from the west was a sight to behold. As expected, he effortlessly lifted 3 barbells at once. His display of brute strength made the general's heart tighten with concern. However, for the sake of his brother, Bayan Gangso hoisted 11 barbells, an incredibly grand feat, instantly defeating his opponent and securing victory for his country. But at the victory feast, a scout brought disheartening news. Bayan Gangso's older brother had fallen in battle, and his body remained unfound to this day. Having lost his only relative, Bayan Gangso was engulfed in sorrow. Going for several days without eating or drinking, the women of the village were beside themselves with worry. If Bayan Gangso were to ruin his health, what would they do then? As fate would have it, an unforeseen drought triggered Dalgang's illness. The villagers called upon an old doctor to diagnose and understand her condition, yet the old doctor claimed that the best cure for her ailment was the warmth of a man's body. Although the practice of a man marrying his brother's widow was common in their culture, for Bayan Gangso, it was a difficult truth to confront. After much contemplation, he decided to save Dalgang's life. Through a fierce internal struggle, they became husband and wife. One day, as the women of the village went about their work and idle chatter within their respective spaces, they suddenly felt unwell. Even the elderly women experienced the long-forgotten sensation of morning sickness. She stood up, hoping to alleviate her discomfort, only to see the man who had returned from the war. The men had fought valiantly for their country, but upon their return, they were met with the shocking realization that they had been cuckolded. Angry but resigned, they had a tough reality to learn. Though resigned to their fates, the most pressing issue was the drought at hand. The old man with white hair said the drought was caused by the mountain spirit bear woman, and when Ian is in need, only Yan can resolve the problem. Thus, they turned their hopes to the capable Bayan Gangso. At that moment, Dalgang's illness relapsed. Bayan Gangso hurriedly carried her to see the herbalist. However, as they were leaving, he encountered his elder brother who had returned from the battlefield missing a leg. Overcome with guilt, Bayan Gangso could not face him and chose to flee. The herbalist informed Bayan Gangso that Dalgang was pregnant. Tragically, due to the heat from the drought, Dalgang's condition worsened. Without rain to cool her down, both mother and child would perish. This was a crushing blow to him. Crushed by guilt and responsibility, he struggled to breathe, but ultimately, to save mother and child, he decided to sacrifice himself by uniting with the bear woman to pray for rain. In the end of the movie, Bayan Gangso was successful. He won over the bear woman and brought forth a great rain. However, burdened by guilt, he chose to live in anonymity. Years later, his grown children went to the river's edge to urinate in memory of Bayan Gangso. Yes, A Tale of Legendary Libido is a South Korean comedy film. Those interested can watch the original film. Yo.